Hey everybody, and welcome to another week of Autism Talk with Alex. Just an autism mom, putting another voice out there on topics to do with autism and that whole life experience so far from the perspective of myself. I'm not an expert, but I'm an autism mom, and I can certainly share my experience from what we have gone through with our son. This is one experience, and there are so many. But I think expressing all our experiences brings forward so much awareness, and that's why I kind of started this Autism Talk to open up that conversation. So this week I'm going to get back to the basics. I have a new microphone. I feel kind of fancy in here in my office. My husband just set it all up for me, and I decided to get this week's episode recorded while I have a snippet of time. So bear with me. This week, as like I said, is a little bit back to basics. What I mean by that is a lot of you tuning in generally know a bit about autism, but there are this maybe handful of you that do not know a whole lot, and I wanted to use this time to go through just a little bit about it. I'm certainly only going to skim the surface. I'm certainly not getting very in depth, but I kind of want to put a little bit of information out there so that you can listen today, and at the end of this, have a little bit more information to go forward. I just had my book signing yesterday and spoke to many people. Some are certainly are autism parents and know all about it. There were some who know family members, and so they know a little bit. And then there were newbies. There were people that were there because they are genuinely curious and really want to get some knowledge going, and I think that's fantastic. It certainly makes for a wonderful future if more people do that. So my biggest thing with autism is being aware and educating yourself. This month is the month of April, and it is Autism Awareness Month, but for autism families, it is 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We certainly want that awareness out there every day of the year. But I do think it's nice that there is a bit more of a spotlight on it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. My big message to everybody is to think outside the box together and create a world of encouragement and support for every person. So I have my little bit of papers here because I jotted some notes down. And I'm going to get a little bit technical here and a little bit clinical. It's not my favorite thing, but I kind of want to express some information to you just so that just to take with you, just to listen and to let it just be on your brain. That's all. So it's not exactly the simplest answer, but what is autism? Autism is a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication, and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. So pretty well, I always sum it up. That's kind of a big term to try and explain to somebody. I sum it up to that the brain works a little differently in social interactions and communication. The autism brain works differently, but it certainly does not work any less than any other brain. Some people tend to think that it means something is missing. I don't really feel like it is missing. I feel like there are things that just work differently. And I think that's every brain. But I think the autistic brain paths just intertwine in different ways. And with early intervention and many other therapies, we can bring all that intertwining together a little more. Some facts about autism. Autism now affects 1 in 68 children. So 1 in 68 children in Canada will be diagnosed with autism. It's actually, the prevalence of autism has increased over 100% in the last 10 years. It impacts every person differently. And the biggest thing that I always say is, if you know one person with autism, child, adult, whatever, you know one person with autism. Children with autism do progress, and I feel that early intervention is so important. They all progress at each and every single level, but progress is beautiful no matter what level that's at. Let's not even say levels, because I even find that degrading. And autism is the fastest growing developmental disorder, but it's the most unfunded, of course. And I could talk about that a whole lot more, but I'll put it on pause for now. That it is something that there needs to be more early intervention. There needs to be so many more resources, especially locally here. As an autism mom, I am very touchy sometimes, but I don't really think it's bad to be. I don't think it's, the more I have educated myself on this journey, the more aware I am of ignorance and how strong it can be. I do believe some people are genuinely curious, asking questions, and I think that that's wonderful. But I think that there's this kind of thing of, certain questions are definitely not on my radar being polite. There's been a recent experience with my family that someone asked if Samuel, who's our youngest, is normal. So, if you know me, the word normal is not in our vocabulary, and it wasn't even before I had children. So, if you actually think to ask somebody if their child is normal, I really think you need to reevaluate yourself. Like I said, I can't hold back. It's how I feel. It's how I felt before I had children, but it's certainly grown stronger after having them. We have also had people saying that it was a sin that Emmett will not have a regular, normal life. And when I go into that, it's right back to, let's not do regular and normal, shall we? Let's do us, and you do you. But you, I don't really like very much anymore. Like I said, can't hold back, no filter. It's just gone. And I don't know if it's because I'm a mother now. I don't know if it's because I'm almost 30. Good Lord help me when I'm turning 40. Because if my filter keeps going the way it's going, it's not going to be very pleasant for some people. Because I just can't. I'm very much about the positive in that, but I just have no tolerance for ignorance. It's just not something in my radar that I have anything for, especially when it comes to my kids. I may not do it for myself, but for my kids, I'm very much, those certain types of questions, I really think that people really need to step back and evaluate how they speak to somebody. Because if you look at any child in the whole world and somebody asks if your child is normal, the actual thought process of that for me, I can't even begin to explain my anger. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of communication tips that I feel are important, because there are people who are so good that they really want to try, and sometimes it can be a bit tougher. And I think these communication tips are good for any person in the world, to be honest, because we can all be this way with everybody. So, just because the person isn't looking at you doesn't mean they're not listening, which is so true. Talk to everybody as an equal and don't talk down to anybody. Be very patient and kind, and when speaking, do not use too many words and don't rush. Be aware of the environment. Sensory input may be affecting how much a person may process. If you're in a really loud party, I find myself, even if you're at a loud birthday party and you're talking to somebody, you may have a little anxiety about the noise, about the crowd, and it may affect how you're speaking to somebody. And one of the most important, because I think they're all equally important, is to always be a friend, and even if it's just sitting together and being present for that person. So if there is somebody, whether they have autism or not, just be there for them and be a friend. It doesn't mean this big, deep conversation. It can certainly be just sitting there and being a support in no matter what way that you can. I really wanted to just, as I said, back to basics today, kind of a little skim of the surface, It's certainly not even scratching the surface. This is just a tiny little bit of information to put out into the world. And I really, really am hoping things will change. After these moments today, after questions like that still being presented, and I know that it will happen. I don't want to focus that will happen all the time, but when it's happening to yourself or your family, it's something that does make you want to certainly keep this autism awareness going. I want to educate people from what I know. I want people to embrace different. I want the word normal to literally be terminated if I could possibly do that. I know that will never happen and it will always be in the dictionary, but asking if anybody in this world is normal, I think that there's something seriously not right with yourself. And like I said, you can probably hear a little bit of sauciness in my voice, but I've always said that I just shoot it straight from the hip. I can't sugarcoat that. I can't go about it and think that it's okay. And if somebody actually says that to you, please stand up for yourself. Please. Just do it. If you're there and you actually let them, that just teaches so many things. And especially if it happens around other small children, it's almost teaching them that it's okay to ask that. And some people really need to look and view and observe and think, wow, I just asked somebody if this child is normal. Yeah, it's not exactly, doesn't exactly, it's not right. And dare I say, my autism mama armor was on pretty thick today after hearing that. So there's also, if anybody ever is curious of small little facts, some famous people with autism, I'll tell you, Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd has Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism. And look at Dan Aykroyd. Daryl Hannah, who was in Splash and Steel Magnolias. And Tim Burton, who, if you don't know who Tim Burton is, God love you. Because Tim Burton is pretty, even though he is in the directing role, he's known. He's pretty well known. If you don't know him, Google him. And probably the first thing that will pop up is The Nightmare Before Christmas or Beetlejuice. His brain is kind of amazing to me, especially visually with all that. So, that's kind of in that realm. There's, of course, Temple Grandin, who is my favorite, but I wanted to I was looking for kind of different resources to use because some people, they like to hear more. They like to, all these things. I just found out this week that Anthony Hopkins was diagnosed with autism. And look at, I'll sound like a real Cape Brettoner, I know I already do, but he's friggin' Anthony Hopkins. So if anybody ever says to you, is your child normal? Say no, they're like Anthony Hopkins, because that's my new answer for everything. And if they say, why is that? I'll go, well, Google it, because I'm just so fed up with ignorance, and it's just building and building. And I don't want to hold on to a lot of things, but I do want to spread the message out there for parents to stand up for themselves, for autism families in general too, and to make it a more patient and kind and open-minded world. And that's what we need. So I'm going to stand off my soapbox now, because that's what I feel like this week's episode was. I'm going to step down. I had my book signing this week. If you go to my Facebook page, which will be in a photo somewhere here in this scheme, you can check out some video clips and pictures that people were kind enough to take. And it was a wonderful turnout. And I can't wait for the next event coming up. And I'm in a grateful state of mind. I'm certainly having moments of being upset, like I said, in general life over particular things, but I'm so grateful because it felt yesterday that there was much more information spread and more awareness put out there. And I'm certainly not anybody special, like I said, but I feel like one voice can bring 10 voices, and that's kind of my goal here. So I shall see you again next week. My information, like I said, will be here right on the screen for you to see if you wish to contact me. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to me and I may chat about them on a future episode. So I hope that you have a great weekend and I shall talk to you guys again soon.